Hey listeners, if you're a wine lover, I've got great news. Slate has a new wine club. Stay tuned at the end of this episode to hear an interview with one of the winemakers we're partnering with. To order your Slate Wine Club shipment, text Mom and Dad to 878-77-SLATE. That's Mom and Dad to 878-777-5283. The following podcast is for parents, maybe not for kids. Hello and welcome to Mom and Dad Are Fighting, Slate's parenting podcast for Thursday, June 17th, the Knuckle Sandwich edition. I'm Dan Coyce. I'm a writer at Slate and the author of the book How to Be a Family, and I'm the dad of Lyra, who's 16, and Harper, who's 13. We live in Arlington, Virginia.
I'm Jamila Lemieux, a writer, contributor to Slate's Care and Feeding Parenting column, and mom to Naima, who is 8, and we live in Los Angeles, California.
I'm Elizabeth Newcamp. I write the homeschool and family travel blog Dutch Goose. I'm the mom to 3 littles, Henry, who's 9, Oliver, who's 7, and Teddy, who's 4, and we live in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
On today's show, we are talking about a mother-in-law who just loves to threaten her young grandchildren with a knuckle sandwich. What should our letter writer do? She's not in love with this behavior. Then we have a very special visitor. It's Jamila's mom. We finally get to ask Jamila's mom all the questions we've ever had about how the hell Jamila turned out the way that she turned out. We're very excited. On Slate Plus today, we're talking about Selena, the I Escaped books, and what happens when your traumatic history becomes just the next thing your kid is super interested in. But as always, we're going to kick it off with some triumphs and some fails. Jamila, what do you got?
So Naima made a good girlfriend in this brief time that she had at school this year, in-person school. There were 4 kids in the class, and they fell into 2 kind of bestie groups or whatever. And so she and this little girl made play date plans for like the last Friday of the school year, which was Friday that just passed. And I was like, cool. Her mom was like, cool. And then at the last minute, her mom wasn't able to do it. And so then we rescheduled for Sunday. And then on Sunday, we had a whole plan. My mother's in town. We were going to go to a little festival, the 3 of us, that my mom wanted to go to, and do a little shopping for her. And then I'd drop her off, and then we would go on this play date. And Naima would feel better because she'd been so devastated and so upset that, on Friday night, I had to like kind of take her out, do what she wanted to do. It was like, hey, let's hang out, whatever you want to do. I know you're disappointed about this. I'll make it up to you as best I can. We had a nice time. So on Sunday, we're getting dressed to go. And the little girl's mom says, hey, I'm so sorry. I got an opportunity to cover a shift at work and I can't pass it up right now. We're not going to be able to make it. So it's this completely fair reason, and like completely understandable to adults, but to a child, it's like, what? You're just taking this thing away from me. So Naima's immediately like, we're just never going to happen. It's just not happening. And the girls had like just signed off of playing Roblox, like, see you in 2 hours. And so like, she texts her like, it's not happening. So no, see you in 2 hours. And, and I'm like, Naima, you and I will go and we'll have a nice day. And whenever they're available next week, I will drop anything. I will make it happen. Right. Like whenever they're available, we will go on this play date. And she's like, no, today is just done. It's just done. And I'm not going to smile. There's nothing you can do to make me smile. I will never smile again. So like, this is the energy with which she left the house. My mother decided to not go with us, probably because, Naima had declared that she was never going to smile again. So this wasn't really looking like the best time at the festival. But my triumph is that somehow I managed to pull her out of that funk with a combination of some good fun tunes in the car and a little cotton candy and a little bit more overindulgence in sugar. And we had a really, really happy day. And she smiled. And when we were coming home, she said, I know I said I wasn't going to smile today, but I really had a good day with you. And we have these necklaces that she just gave, like my mom bought for her, took her to buy, and so she and I could have them at Claire's. It says mother and daughter. It's like a half heart. I have to like remember to take this off because I'm going to the club tonight. But like her thing now is that we like hold them up to each other. And so like we were coming in and she told me that I made her smile. Like she held up the necklace to me. And like when I was putting her to bed and I thought she was asleep, she just holds up her necklace like, So what was going to be the worst day ends up being one of the best days we've had together in a really long time.
That's really sweet.
Are you just like exploding with all the cool mom joy too?
Yes, I felt like such a cool mom. I was like, I took you out to something that I actually enjoyed doing too. And like, it was not miserable. We didn't have to like, I don't know, go to Chuck E. Cheese or something. Like, we just had a really nice time in each other's company.
Doing something normal. I love that. Way to recover the day.
Way to
I
recover.
love that.
Shout out to Sugar.
Yeah, sometimes when a kid is really determined to make a full day a disaster, it can feel like there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. That you too are sentenced to that. So the act of pulling them out of that without being overt about it, without being like, okay, now smile, smile now. Like, that's really good.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, what about you? Triumph or fail?
Fail for me. So we had a big weekend of just like moving errands. Like there's all kinds of things that the movers either like lost or damaged beyond repair that need replaced. And we usually try to like just do one adult and one kid running errands. But it was like some of the things we need are like some furniture. And so we decided we'd take the whole family out so that we could like all sit around the hopefully new dining room table and like kind of make sure that everybody liked it in hopes, that it doesn't get broken again. It's nice. So we got everyone into the car, but my car, after coming back from the road trip, needed to go into the shop. And when Jeff took it, he was like, oh, I'm going to sit with it. So I emptied nothing except for Teddy's car seat. Like the other two kids have travel car seats. Okay, well, fast forward 2 weeks, that car is still in the shop. So I'm in like a temporary vehicle. So I have none of the things that I usually have. So I rush the kids out of the house. It's like always kind of a mess to get everybody in the car, especially because we don't have our, not everyone's in their normal car seats. They don't have their normal stuff in the car. I get everybody in the car. We drive like 25 minutes to the first store. We open the doors and we're getting everybody out. And Henry's like, oh, we're going to the store. I don't have shoes on. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have shoes on? Like, who gets in the car without shoes on? So I'm like, okay, there's a Marshall's here. So I take Teddy and I go to the Marshall's, and Jeff puts socks on Henry and like puts him into the cart, like of the Bed Bath & Beyond, and they go to get a trash can with Oliver. So like my, 70-pound 9-year-old is like in the cart, like pushing him around shopping for trash cans. I go to the Marshall's. There is like nothing in his size, but I find a pair of those like sport slides a size and a half too big. And I think like, okay,
like
well,
the Mark Zuckerberg Adidas.
Yes, exactly. Those exact things. But, some like one pair of some kind of off-brand at Marshall. So I purchased these for $16. I'm like, whew, like disaster averted because we have so many shops to go to. I like give them to him. He looks crazy because they're way too big, but at least they're shoes. We like continue on our day, run our errands. Okay. We go out on Sunday and we are headed to the library to like go get some books. And I pull up and we're getting out of the car. It's just me. And Teddy's like, I don't have shoes. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have shoes? So
what about your new slides?
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, he's like, can't you just go to the store and buy me shoes? I'm like, no. So I make it work. I run and return the books. We don't get new books. It's totally fine. This morning, you guys, we go to swim team to pick up the children. The two bigs are in swim team. And I open the door to the car, and Teddy's like, you're going to have to carry me. I don't have shoes. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. I just had one kid with me this last time.
Sounds to me like your kid has discovered a fun new game.
I think he has discovered a fun new game. But wait, you picked him up from swim and he was shoeless?
So Teddy was with me, and we had to go get the kids from swim.
I'm sorry.
team.
Okay,
yeah.
He's already in the car.
Sorry.
I thought you meant on the way.
He's already in the car.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had one kid with me all morning, and somehow we had shoes when we dropped them off. We did not have shoes when we picked them up.
You were getting played.
Do you get it? Yeah, I'm like.
Loves getting carried and buying new shoes.
Are you going to find these shoes in a seat back pocket when you return the rental?
shoes are like exactly where they're supposed to be here at the house in the cubby by the door. No, I mean, if this were my car, I would throw the shoes in there and the shoes would never leave there. Like I would take them off of his feet and I would just stick them back in the car so that there was always a pair. But it's not my car. And so
you should put the slides in there.
Yeah.
Everyone can just wear the size 8 slides.
Yeah.
These are the
They're the emergency
shoes.
shoes. Like you have an emergency first aid kit.
Okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
The shoes of shame.
And then whoever rents the car next will have a nice treat waiting for them. Exactly. Size 8 athletic shower slides. All right. I have It's somewhere between. It's a little bit of triumph, a little bit of fail, all baked in a casserole. I'll let you guys judge where it falls on the spectrum in the end. So Harper is graduating from 8th grade, from middle school this week. And, it's been a very strange school year. And so I think Harper is not maybe quite as jazzed about the whole graduation experience as she might have been in a normal school year. Or maybe she's just at the age where, like, you just don't get jazzed about that stuff, where it just all seems sort of vaguely embarrassing that people are making a big deal out of anything. So they've had a bunch of, sort of modest activities, including the ones that I discovered after I called the school so angrily to complain about how it was going to be a Zoom graduation in my previous fail. But then, eventually they announced they're going to have like, yard signs for everyone, which we haven't picked up yet, and a greeting from the principal. And the big thing was this drive-through parade that they announced, which seemed very fun. The idea was, for like a 2-hour window earlier this week, you could drive through the front driveway of school and everyone from school would be there cheering all the graduates on, all the teachers and staff and a bunch of parents and everyone. And they promised there would be decorations and noises and fun, and the kids would really enjoy it. Harper was mildly interested in this and willing to do it, but definitely was not evincing a lot of enthusiasm about it. But I was feeling sort of bad that an occasion that in previous years probably would have meant a lot more pomp and circumstance in general from us and from the school and from the world, it felt like it was a little bit flat for her. So I was like, all right, well, one thing I know we can do is for this drive-through parade, we can decorate the car. That's the thing that everyone loves to do around Arlington. It's a real suburban joy activity for any big event in a kid's life. They're on a sports team that made it to state, or it's prom, or you just turned 12 or whatever. Everyone decorates their cars with like special car paint and streamers and balloons and shit. And then for like a week afterwards, you see the car driving around with like the ghosts of all this writing on the windows. It's like, sometimes it seems like 70% of the cars in Arlington are in some stage of celebration, decoration, decomposition. So I was like, well, I'm going to decorate the car for Harper for her parade. She's going to love it. So the parade was Monday. Harper has gotten herself a little part-time job babysitting for the 3rd grader of a friend of ours for a couple of hours on Mondays when she has her asynchronous learning day. So she doesn't have any actual classes. So she has time to go take care of a kid. So the kid's parents can get anything done that day. So she loves it. So she was there babysitting for Sebastian. I was going to pick her up at 2:30. And at like 2:27, I was like, all right, how do I decorate this car?
Oh, no.
Dad.
Needless to say, I had forgotten to buy any paint or anything like that. But I did have soap. I had a bar of Irish Spring soap. So I took that out to the car and I used it to draw on the back windshield. Happy graduation, Harper, Williamsburg, class of 2020, blah, blah. I wrote all this stuff on there. And I thought, honestly, it looked okay. We had a big party streamer and Ollie and I wrapped it around the back windshield wiper. So it trailed behind the car. So I wouldn't say it looked professionally done, but it looked different than the car usually looked.
Oh.
So I went to pick up Harper at Sebastian's house for the parade. Sebastian was coming along because she was still officially babysitting for him. And they both walked out of the house and looked at the car, and Harper went, oh no. Dad, did you do that? And I said, yeah. And Sebastian said, you did that? And I said, yeah. And Harper just literally did like a face palm.
Oh, God.
And then she shook her head and then she got in the car. We drove toward the drive-through parade. And as we were approaching, I noticed, there are other cars on the road with, let's say, fancier decorations. Big balloons they put on the windshield that said class of 2021 or whatever. They decorated their cars.
They did not use soap.
Fashion. And each time one would pass, I was thinking, class of 2021, why do they all put these years from the future on their
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh, it is 2021 now, but I wrote 2020 all over our car in Irish Spring soap. And I made this observation to Harper, and she went, oh my God, Dad. And then we drove through the parade, and I high-fived the Williamsburg Wolf mascot. And they had dozens of people cheering, and Harper honestly seemed to like the parade quite a bit. And then we drove home, and before I could do anything else, Harper and I wiped off the last 0 in 2020, and I brought the soap back out, and we replaced it with a 1. And then I brought her back to her babysitting gig. So that was her big graduation surprise for me. So what do you think? Fail them?
Yes, it's a fail. This is not redeemed.
Where's the
Straight
triumph?
fail. All right, great.
Where's the
Which
triumph?
part was the triumph?
I did anything.
In some cases, doing nothing is better.
Some cases doing nothing. When we got, I feel like this was already a doing nothing might have been better moment when Harper and Sebastian saw it, but it was the 2020 that took it just perfect fail.
This is the real issue, is that it turns out I've now been working in magazines long enough that I just need copy editors for everything. I can't go uncopy edited. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. Anyways, happy graduation, Harper.
Happy graduation.
I'm sorry your dad is a fuck up, but better luck in 2025 or whatever year it is you graduate from high school. Who can say? All right. Before we move on to our segments today, we've got a listener update. We love these, and we're really grateful for this listener for writing in. So a few weeks back, you might remember that former Mom and Dad Are Fighting co-host Allison Benedict, rest in peace, our bickering correspondent, joined us to tackle a question about grandparents arguing with each other to the point where their grandson was just saying he didn't even want to see them anymore. He couldn't take it anymore. And this listener wrote in after hearing our advice on the show. Jamila, take it away.
Hello again. I just wanted to thank you for your advice and give an update on my situation. Believe it or not, I'd never thought of talking to my parents separately, and your advice made me realize that I was causing them to be defensive when I brought it up with them both in the room. So I took my mom to the nail salon a week ago, and I told her that the bickering was starting to affect my kids and that G was starting to complain about their arguing. I told her that I don't want to make them see the kids separately, but it would be necessary to separate them if the arguing didn't stop. She was a little defensive at first, but when I brought up how my son complains about visiting them, she softened and said, "Really? I didn't know it upsets him that much." She told me she would try, but she also said, "Well, remember, it's not my fault if your dad starts arguing," to which I replied that she can ignore him and walk away. I haven't spoken to my dad yet because he's a lot more defensive and not keen on talking about emotions. However, we just saw them today for the first time since I took my mom to the salon, and things have dramatically improved. They hardly argued at all, and when my dad brought up an old argument, my mom just rolled her eyes, shrugged her shoulders, and walked out of the room. I was astonished, and the best part of it was that my kids seemed so much more at ease and comfortable. I really noticed a difference in my son's demeanor and reaction to my parents. He happily spent hours talking and reading books with them, and he didn't leave the room to play on his own like he usually does. If they do start arguing again, I plan to remind my mom how much happier my son is if he doesn't need to referee or hide from them. Thank you so much for your sage advice and your ability to point me in the right direction to get me on the right track.
That's so great. I love that we were helpful to this woman. I hope at some point she is able to talk to her dad as well, or that someone talks to her dad. But this seems like a great start to making this situation better. So I'm going to pass this on to Allison, rest in peace, and let her know that her advice was really good. And thank you so much, listener, for checking back in. And anyone, if we ever answer your question on the show, we love it when we hear back from you. So drop us a line at momanddad@slate.com. All right, let's talk business. First, please subscribe to Mom and Dad Are Fighting. It really helps us out. Plus, it really helps you out because in the daily craziness of the working week, all of a sudden a magical gift will show up in your podcast feed, a new episode. It's a win-win. And if you want even more of our show, you should become a Slate Plus member. You'll get a whole bonus segment every single week. Here's a sneak peek of what you could hear today.
There's also like September 11th, like Pearl Harbor, like these.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yes. I Survived 9/11.
There's
book
I
is
Survived 9/11.
wild.
That is really the one that initially set me off.
Not only will you get fun extra segments like that, you'll also get the rest of the podcast with no ads. You'll get bonus episodes for shows like Slow Burn and Big Mood, Little Mood. You'll get to listen to the whole new season of Decoder Ring now instead of waiting for my episode, which otherwise you'll have to wait until July for. And you'll get unlimited reading on the Slate site. So support Mom and Dad Are Fighting, support Slate, sign up for Slate Plus. It's only $1 for the first month. Just go to slate.com/momanddadplus. And if you want even more of us, sign up for Slate's parenting newsletter. It's the best place to be notified about all our parenting stuff, including Mom and Dad Are Fighting, Care and Feeding, and much, much more. Also, it's just, a personal email from me every week. Sign up at slate.com/parenting email. All right, let's take a quick break.
You know the saying, we are what we eat. And as parents, we need to make sure our kids are getting the nutrients they need. Did you know statistics show that 95% of kids eat an insufficient amount of veggies? That's why I'm so happy to have found Kids Good Stuff by Nuzest. It's a delicious multi-nutrient drink mix designed specifically for kids. Kids Good Stuff not only provides the essential nutrients growing bodies need, it also supports healthy bones, delivers long-lasting energy, and even improves immunity. Each serving of Kids Good Stuff contains health-supporting ingredients that you can pronounce, like pre- and probiotics for happy tummies, and vitamins and minerals to help fill the gaps in their diets. Best of all, even the pickiest of eaters love it. I've been mixing it into our smoothies. We love to add just a little bit of the vanilla caramel in with our frozen spinach and frozen fruits for a refreshing morning snack that I know is now packed with nutrients. Kids Good Stuff is vegan and it contains no added sugar. Plus, it's free from common allergens like gluten, peanuts, eggs, dairy, and soy. It comes in 3 delicious flavors: vanilla caramel, rich chocolate, and wild strawberry. But Nuzest isn't only for kids. They have products for adults too, like their Clean Lean Protein. Trust me, you can feel good about giving Kids Good Stuff by Nuzest to your kids. And right now, I have a special offer for my listeners. Try all 3 flavors of Kids Good Stuff with their starter pack for just $9.99 plus free shipping. Go to nuzest.us/mom. Don't wait. Order your starter pack today at nuzest.us/mom.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive. Saving money on your car insurance is easy with Progressive. It's an average savings of over $750 for customers who switch and save. In fact, customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts on their auto policy with Progressive, including discounts just for starting a quote online or having multiple vehicles on their policy. Get your quote online at Progressive.com and see how much you could be saving. Potential annual average auto insurance savings by new customers surveyed in 2019. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations.
And we're back. All right, on to our first listener question. Let's hear it. Shasha Leonard.
Dear Mom and Dad, I have an 18-month-old daughter, and my husband and I live in the same city as his parents. They've been great, and I can count on them if we ever need them. I've always had some concerns, though, because they aren't always into new ideas, especially when it comes to parenting. My mother-in-law had 3 boys by the time she was 25, so it's been a while since she's had to parent. For example, they both were a little grossed out that I breastfed my daughter until 9 months, and were elated when we switched to formula. Last summer, during quarantine, Grandma watched our then 6-month-old over the summer, and when my daughter did anything quote-unquote bad, she would say to my daughter, "Do you want a knuckle sandwich?" while shaking a balled-up fist at her. I was horrified at first. My mother-in-law doesn't take criticism well at all and gets defensive. So I talked to my husband about it because he's always been willing to handle those situations. He thought it was harmless and just a funny thing. I mentioned it to my therapist, who also said that while not ideal, it would not affect how we're raising our daughter. I did my best not to let it bother me. Fast forward to now. My daughter will ball up her fist when they say it, and it's all cute and funny to them. Until last weekend, when my father-in-law did the whole routine, but proceeded to fake punch my daughter in the eye. I was shocked. I know they would never hit her or anyone, but why? That's not cute or funny. My husband didn't see it, but he said he would handle things with his dad. Do I trust that it will stop? How do I start speaking up for my parenting with my in-laws? Do I chalk it up to the old-style parenting of boys? I don't feel like it's my place to talk to them, but Sometimes I feel my husband lets too much time pass before bringing things up. Thanks. Intimidated and shy mom.
Okay, I think this is like all about the intonation and like the scenario in which this is done. So my in-laws do something like this. It has to do more with like, eat this food, or, would you prefer a knuckle sandwich? And my kids think it's hysterical. I mean, they just laugh. It's like very loony, toony, like violent, funny. I don't find it funny. They find it funny. I think, though, that the joke for the kids is because they know their grandparents would not punch them, right? Like they know that the punch or the knuckle sandwich is like a fake threat. So that is funny to them. That being said, it's clearly a big deal to her, to the letter writer. But if you have outsourced this to your husband, like you have said, this is your family, you need to deal with this. This is why it bothers me. I think you have to believe that he is going to talk to them about it and do something about it. I'm not sure that it's necessarily like smart to then get involved in something in which you have expressed to him that you don't like with his family. He has said he's going to address it until there is some demonstration that like there is some sort of harm or it's causing some kind of problem. If your child starts punching people, this is a whole different conversation. I just really feel like she has to trust that he's going to do something about it instead of like trying to go around it and now talk to the parents about this when he hasn't gotten a chance. So, I mean, I think expressing her displeasure to her husband about this behavior is fine, and discussing that, because maybe, without seeing it, it's hard to know, like, does it really feel harmless and funny? And then just something like, we don't do at home. And in fact, when my kids have made the knuckle sandwich joke at home, I've just said like, I don't really find it that funny. And then that has kind of killed it, right? Because the whole point of it is that it's like everybody thinks it's funny and everybody's laughing. And when that ceases to happen, then the joke is no longer funny. So at our house, that doesn't necessarily happen. It happens at the in-laws' house. So I don't know. I think you just let it lie. But what do you guys think?
To your last point, I think you can even articulate that something is maybe a grandma and grandpa's house joke versus an our house joke, right? That's something that I've had to do with Naima. Bathroom humor is not something that I'm willing to entertain in this house, right? And so I'm like, if that's okay at Dad's house, that's totally fine. It's fine in a lot of people's houses. It is not something that I want for this house. And I think to that point, you should be clear that your husband is clear on what your opposition to this behavior is, and that he has the language to articulate it to his parents. Because if it's just like, well, I don't like it, it's, come on, look at that. Why would you let them do that, right? Like if he's operating from that place, it may be kind of difficult for him to explain to these old school people why this is so bothersome to you. It may just become, well, she doesn't like it. Could you just not? Which is not really an ideal way to have that conversation, right? Like, and so what is it to you, letter writer? Because you didn't really articulate it to us. Is it that you don't want to normalize violence? Is it that you don't think any sort of violent play is okay for children? Do you think it's because she's a girl? Like, what is your opposition to it? I think you should make that clear to your husband, and also set a time with him for him to have this conversation, instead of saying, I hope that he'll get to it, right? Just say like, okay, we're going to be visiting your parents on Sunday. Do you think that maybe you could have a chat with them while we're there? Or if we're going to be taking this trip together in 2 weeks, when do you think you'll get a moment with your parents, just so we can make sure we're on the same page? What do you think, Dan?
I really feel for this husband in this situation, who I think is probably not saying anything to his parents because he believes, correctly in my opinion, that his parents will be like, but that's not objectionable or bad at all. And it's a cute thing that we share with our grandkids that we like, that with our grandkid that we like, and that makes her laugh. And you don't have any good reason for not wanting us to do it. And it doesn't make any sense. And he is worried that it is going to make her look neurotic and weird to his parents to bring this up to them. And I think he's right to worry about that, because I think it will make her look neurotic and weird. because I really think that this is like a gigantic nothing burger of a behavior situation that if you can find any possible way to do it, you should just continue to let go and not think about it ever again. Like, this is a funny thing that your in-laws do. It's not your style. It harms no one, will never harm anyone, and brings your daughter joy. And continuing to like make an issue about it and to include your husband in making an issue about it is just a recipe for your in-laws being annoyed by you, your husband being annoyed by your in-laws and by you, and you continuing to be annoyed when it's just replaced by some other behavior that you also don't like. So the ideal scenario here, I think, would be for you to continue listening to the advice that your therapist gave you, which is that it's not going to affect how you're raising your daughter. It has no effect whatsoever. And that it really would be best for you to let it not bother you, that a playful, goofy, pretend punch in the eye from a person you love that is offered totally in the spirit of funny silliness is not the same, I don't think, and I think certainly your in-laws agree, is not the same as like advocating violence or being permissive about violence. The thing that makes me feel bad about giving this advice is that sign off that she gave in this letter, that she feels intimidated and shy in this situation. And that, I think, seems like a real problem, certainly much realer to me than this imaginary problem of this behavior of the grandparents. And if you're truly feeling, letter writers, so intimidated and shy about this situation that you simply like can't imagine bringing up something that clearly is really important to you, to these people, you know, that seems worth digging into and exploring, perhaps with that therapist, perhaps with your husband. But I'm curious what you guys think about that sign off, which to me seemed notable in light of the sort of the tone of the rest of the letter.
And you're speaking to kind of like how she says, how do I start speaking up for my parenting with my in-laws? Like, I'm giving you this one example.
Right. And the example she gave earlier in the letter about her parents being like pains in the ass about her breastfeeding, like that's a real thing.
Right.
That's a real thing that I'm sure she wanted to speak up about, but couldn't find it within her ability to do so.
I mean, I think so much of that is about building up that relationship with your spouse too, and having his support in those moments, right? So that, especially because it's his parents, like being able to have an open dialogue, like I don't see anything wrong with her telling her spouse and having conversations, you know, with her partner about what she doesn't like about the parenting that happens when they're there. But I agree with you, Dan, that some of that then has to be like, if he says, I really don't see, you know, a big deal about this. And if I tell them this might be the eventual consequence, like you have to accept that some things, we say this all the time, some things that your parents do or your grandparents do with your kids, they are not going to be the way you do them. And you just sort of say, this is okay, because you want to have that relationship with them in the same way that you don't want to be told, you know, how your parenting is wrong, right? They don't want to be told how their parenting is wrong. But I agree with you that I think the issue is that she needs to be able to tell her spouse these things, and then he needs to be there for her in those moments so that when the breastfeeding is an issue or when something like that comes up, whatever the next thing, you know, how you're potty training, how you're doing this, that it is the person telling their parents kind of, this is how we've decided to do it, right? Standing up for the way you as a family have decided to do something. Is very different, though, than saying, like, we don't do X when X is harmless. And so the two are very different, but I think it all comes from this relationship of trusting the other person. And I think that's like, when she says, like, how do I trust him that he's going to do this? I feel like in a partnership, you just have to trust that the other person is going to put your best interest, even if that's not talking to their parents, right? Even if it's to say, I'm going to handle it. If the handling it is just, I'm just for this moment going to make it go away and in our house not laugh about it, right? You have to trust that this person is doing the right thing, even if it's not the way you necessarily wanted them to handle it.
You know what, though? I agree with that. And I do think that, like, an underlying issue may be that this isn't you all's parenting style. This is your feeling that you all have not like talked about effectively so that he's on board, that you all have come to an agreement about like what is acceptable play violence and what isn't, right? Like that it just kind of sounds like you've had this reaction to something and you've made a decision about how you would like for that to be, how that sort of thing would factor in your household, right? Like that perhaps it's no play. And again, I don't know what that thing is, but I'm assuming that it's violence is, you know, to be avoided. But like, if this is not a discussion that you all have had beyond just what it means to have them playing the knuckle sandwich game with the baby, then he certainly is not prepared to communicate this on your behalf. And no, you can't trust him to do it because you all haven't had that conversation. But I will disagree with you all a little bit in that I don't think this is a nothing burger because she's so bothered by it, and that it's that reference to defending her style of parenting. This itself may be a nothing issue, right? Because we don't know how old these grandparents are. When your child is old enough where something like this could be more impactful, I don't know if they would still be playing those games with them, right? But in this moment, it sounds like you feel unheard. And I don't know if you deal with anxiety, but like for a lot of people, feeling unheard or feeling like I want to articulate myself and I can't can be incredibly stressful. And it can make something that is kind of small, like, you know, playing a punching game with the baby, feel like it's this bigger thing because now it's become reflective of the fact that I'm always unheard. And so just really quickly, I want to defend your right to, if this is for you something very serious, and it could be, you know, perhaps the letter writer has some childhood experience with being played with in a rough manner that was bothersome to them. And maybe it wasn't necessarily that an adult was doing it. Maybe it was an adult relative, right? Maybe there was an uncle or a grandparent that was just too rough and tumble, that stood out in contrast with the way that she felt people typically should engage her. It also could be that maybe there were some kids at school that were rough, and the idea of playing rough with her child then begs the idea, will she become that child to someone else, or will she think that roughhousing is normal, and what might that lead to? So I think there could be something a little bit more intense behind this than what the letter has revealed. But either way, I think we're all on the same page about you perhaps speaking to your therapist about how to best address this, as well as talking to your husband at great length.
It does also seem like, because the daughter, I mean, I know the daughter is little, but she does seem to enjoy this. And I do think there's like an aspect of parenting in which sometimes your kids enjoy things that you don't find humorous or that you don't enjoy. And if in fact they are harmless, you do kind of have to, say, okay, well, this is, assessing that it's harmless. And I mean, Jamila, I think it's a really good point that you made, that it's possible there's like so much more behind that, in which case then there may be a really good reason to end this type of play, right? Like if it is causing you some kind of trauma because it's reminding you of something, investigating that with the therapist, and then possibly even, having your husband or you speaking to your in-laws about that, for sure. But I think sometimes as parents, we just have to accept these things that our kids find funny and do, and set some rules about where those are. I mean, I think the bathroom humor is a great example. I also just have zero tolerance for that. My husband grew up in a house in which that is like still enjoyed by the entire family, and to, lots of laughter. And I would never want to put the damper on that in their home, but it is not something that I want happening in my home. And I think it's okay to have that, to be like, this is a place in which that is enjoyed and it's funny. And this is a place in which like mom doesn't really find it that funny. And so we just, it's better to just not do it here. I don't know.
The thing that I keep coming back to is the wise notion that both of you pointed out of coming to an agreed set of shared parenting ideals with your partner. Like that's the point and the benefit of partnered parenting, is that you have the two of you have worked out and discussed, and sometimes are figuring out on the fly, but always with as much honesty as you can muster, figuring out what it is you want your house to be like. And in situations like this, in which there's an outside force that is doing something, with your child, that you have to figure out how you feel about it. Part of that honesty is you feeling empowered enough to talk to your partner about how you feel about it. But part of that honesty is also both of you working together to figure out, when is it your parents are being dicks about me breastfeeding? And when is it a thing that the grandparents and our granddaughter really love that my therapist has said will do no harm to anyone. And short of, as Jamila points out, some real past trauma that is making this, outstandingly difficult for you to endure, I think that being able together to work out which side of the line certain behaviors fall on is the goal you should be trying to reach. Not just trying to get your husband to tell your parents, well, don't do this thing because you know her, she hates that stuff, which is what this will inevitably turn into if you treat it in this way. All right. Intimidated and shy mom. I'm sorry if I made you feel more intimidated and shy. We really are rooting for you and rooting for you and your husband to do even more to work out what kinds of parents you're going to be, which has been a hard thing to figure out in these crazy times. And it's something that all of us are still figuring out even now, but we believe that you'll get there. Drop us a line and let us know how it's going. momanddad@slate.com. All right, let's take a quick break. This episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting is brought to you by Bush's Beans. Hey, we just had our first cookout of the summer so far this past weekend. It was hot. It was sunny. It was beautiful. We had friends in the backyard. We got to talk. We got to eat together. We got to hug. We got to do all the things that I missed. It felt like summer. And no summer meal is really complete without the classic taste of Bush's baked beans. We sure loved them at our cookout, and you'll love them at yours. It's the sweet, slow-cooked center of the barbecue universe. It's the taste of summer. It's the summer you remember. It's the summer that you want right now. With the sweet taste of Bush's baked beans by their side, the savory flavors of burgers and brats, especially brats, can reach delicious new heights. Bush's baked beans are sure to make your cookout or your family get-together beautiful. So find them, cook them, serve them to your friends, serve them to the people that you love. Make this summer the great summer you want it to be. If you want to learn more about Bush's baked beans, head on over to bushbeans.com/momanddad. This episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting is brought to you by Gold Peak Real Brewed Tea. Summer is here. It's getting hot here in Arlington. It's probably getting hot where you are. But when it's hot and you need refreshment, Gold Peak Real Brewed Tea is as refreshing as it gets. They come in a variety of flavors. I'm a sweet tea guy. My wife prefers unsweetened. My kids, of course, love fruit, so they're super into Georgia peach flavored. But whatever flavor you drink, you know that Gold Peak Real Brewed Tea is committed to showing off the natural goodness of tea, plain and simple. That's because Gold Peak Real Brewed Tea is real about what's good, like being unapologetically wholesome with your family. Now, longtime fans might notice the Gold Peak Real Brewed Tea has had a makeover. The outside of every bottle has a brand new look, but inside, it's the same real brewed tea you know and love. Because your family is too real for tea that's fake. Look for Gold Peak Real Brewed Tea in its newly redesigned bottle wherever you grab your groceries. Don't just keep it real, keep it real brewed. Gold Peak Real Brewed Tea. Stay gold.
This episode of Mom and Dad Are Fighting is brought to you by Best Fiends. As a kid, we didn't play for the sake of winning prizes, mostly. It was about having a good time, doing new things, and never wanting the fun to end. And that's what you'll love about Best Fiends. It always leaves you feeling refreshingly challenged. With Best Fiends, you solve tons of fun puzzles with just the right amount of challenge and strategy involved. It's way more fun than smashing candy over and over. Best Fiends literally has thousands of levels. There's something new to play every day. And the adorable, collectible characters just keep coming. You're going to have a tough time choosing a favorite. So if you're itching for a fun puzzle game with no game over, give Best Fiends a try. Just don't play mouse if you can't put your phone down. Download the 5-star puzzle game Best Fiends free today on the App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
All right, back to the show. All right, listeners, for our next segment, you are in for a treat. Many, many years ago on Mother's Day, Allison and I brought in our mothers to the show, and it was a catastrophic success that I hope never to replicate. But now I've got bigger and better news. The source of Jamila Lemieux, the person who raised her, the source probably, I have to say, of all her wise parenting advice and knowledge and know-how, Joining us today is Jamila's mom. Please welcome Isoki. Hi, Isoki.
Hello.
Hey, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Jamila, tell us, why is Isoki in your closet right now with you? And why did you want to bring her on the show?
Well, my daughter has provided so much rich content for me over the years. I figured it was time for my mom to do her share. She's largely been protected from all of this stuff. But since she was here, I thought it would be fun to let her join the show.
And Isoki, you've been in LA for a little while, visiting, helping out. How's it been?
It's been so nice to be with my family, to be with my daughter and my granddaughter for the first time in about 13 or 14 months. So I'm very pleased to be here. LA for me is Chicago, and will take a bit of getting used to, but it's been a pleasant visit so far.
So we like to start off the show with a triumph or fail. So I'm curious if you have a triumph or fail to share with us, either from your time in LA now, or maybe from the distant past of raising our beloved Jamila.
Well, I have a tried and fail with Naima. The last time we were together, I made this meatloaf that she really, really liked. She was just overwhelmed. And this time I made the meatloaf, and not only was she not overwhelmed, didn't really eat it. So that's my fail. On the other side of the coin, the last time we were together, whenever I came close to Naima with a comb or a brush to comb her hair, it was like traumatic. She would scream words like, "You're killing me," and "Please stop it." Now she comes to me.
Why are you doing this to me?
No.
That's my favorite.
Oh, why are you doing this to me? Yeah. But she comes to me now and asks me to perform the task. She asked me to do her hair more than once.
Oh, well, that's beautiful. That's a much greater triumph than your fail was a
triumph.
Fail. Oh, yeah. Meatloaf is temporary, but that connection is forever.
Yeah.
I think it's also a reflection of how much I failed to make Naima feel comfortable while I do her hair, that she's so excited that someone else's hands will be grooming her while she's here. So my fail is your triumph.
So now that you've gotten to spend some really good quality time with Naima, how do you think things are different now for a kid growing up than it was when Jamila was her age? And what similarities do you see between them?
Oh, it's totally different. The main aspects, electronics. Jamila was a tremendous reader. We read books, 10, 15 books a week. Naima goes through 10 or 15 different apps a day. It's the pace is swifter. The learning process is more intense. The kids are absorbing more and more information, but differently. Jamila was introverted. Naima's a tad more outgoing.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little.
So we have heard a lot how much Naima loves your house and particularly your couch. But we want to know what you think about Jamila's house.
Oh, I love it. I could live here. I could do this alone. Naima likes my house, I think, because I have some unique things. And
like African artwork and stuff.
Yeah, I have a lot of that.
The other big thing we've heard about since moving to LA is Jamila's car. Have you had a chance to ride with her?
I have.
How'd it go?
Jamila's car is unique. And therefore, it gets a lot of attention. And she drives like her dad. Can I say how? Really
Sure.
Like a bat out of hell.
I do not.
Yeah. You have your.
I'm sure he would say.
But
that
I
she
love
just
the car.
drives
The car is
wonderfully.
really cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah.
I think I'm such a safe, responsible, slow driver.
Okay.
You're mentioning the attention that the car gets, brings me to another thing that I'm curious about. Jamila's life is really lived in public. She writes and newsletters and talks on this podcast about her life, about her family, about you sometimes for a living. And I'm curious how you feel about having a daughter who is really putting herself out there in that way. And does it ever make you nervous to have what you might sort of feel like is your business out in the world?
But of course, you think about what could happen in the future as a result of putting everything on the line. And the fact that I'm not that type of a person. I'd like to function in the background, make things happen, be the mover and shaker, but I want to be up front. But she's been this way for quite a while now. So I've become accustomed. We started writing and publishing at 14.
Mm-hmm. Not consistently until
Not
I
consistently,
was 21.
but the beginning. That was the beginning. And I had to assume that was the direction she was going into. And I had to adjust. And when she started working for a major magazine, I knew I had to adjust because that was who she was. We have been in different cities and walked down the street, and she's been recognized. Initially, that was kind of, wow, oh.
Yeah.
But it took a bit of getting used to.
Do you call her up and share your opinion on the things she writes, or do you?
Of course, yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think my mom has a strict, only positive feedback policy with me still, even though I'm 46 and could probably take it. Do you have that policy with Jamila, or will you disagree with her on stuff?
Well, we discuss things, and being from different generations, of course, we have different opinions and different backgrounds. But more often than not, I'm giving her positive feedback. I try.
Since we delve out parenting advice, we were hoping that maybe you might give the best piece of parenting advice that you've ever given or feel inspired to give now.
All-purpose parenting advice.
All-purpose parenting advice.
Yes, this is something that was told to me years ago. I believe Jamila was in preschool. And I was talking to another parent, and the parent told me, we were discussing what was going on in class and how the kids were responding and if they were getting the information the teachers were trying to impart. And she told me, remember this, you have to be responsible for educating your child. It is your personal responsibility. She can get her basics from classrooms, but the ultimate responsibility to educate our children socially, historically, etc., lies with us, the parent.
What's a story about little Jamila that she will be so angry you told us right now on the podcast?
Oh, okay. The runaway story.
Okay.
The runaway story. Jamila was 4.
I think so.
4, and I can't recall what it is I said that upset her. There was so many things it could have been, but she was going to run away. She had decided to run away, so she bagged up some Oreos, and she took them. We lived on a second flight in an apartment building, and she took them down to the first flight where there was like an alcove, a little, and that was her runaway space.
That's how far you made it, Jamila?
Well, I don't know if I even made it out the door. I just remember thinking it's going to be so awkward when my mom walks back and forth between the door and her apartment because we're going to have to see each other. And that's what made me abandon the whole plan. I was like, how am I going to deal with that? Can we say hi? And I only had 3 cookies. So there was that. I wasn't planning on that.
I said
it wasn't a long term.
No, I'm saying I only had 3 in the bag because I think it was one of those snack size bags. Right, that was the other issue. It was how was I going to get more food? It wasn't a well-baked plan. So I had to let it go. Did you want me to run? Do you wish I kind of want to say I was going to try it.
Yeah. Well, we are so grateful to you, Isoki, for all you have done raising this truly unique individual who we get to talk to every week. Clearly, you did something right because, unlike me, she often delivers actually good, thought-out parenting advice. which she must have gotten from somewhere. So nice work. Thank you for joining us. Elizabeth, it's your turn to bring a mom onto the show.
We'll see.
Thank you, Isoki.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here. It was very nice to meet you all.
It was so nice to meet you.
All right, finally, we've got the part of the show where we like to recommend things we enjoy. I like to call it enjoyments. Elizabeth, what do you got?
So I am recommending this fun little Rubik's Cube called the Go Cube Smart Rubik's Cube. It connects to an app and it helps you solve the Rubik's Cube and then coaches you on getting faster. And here's why. Because Henry is so into solving this Rubik's Cube and I am shameful at being able to help him. It was like an obsession over the drive to try to do this Rubik's Cube. And I was looking up the things and trying to help remember the patterns. I suck at doing that. You start doing it, and then when you get stuck, the app helps you do the next moves, and there's different levels, and it's teaching you the basic moves. He's gotten really into like watching the competitions in which you do them really fast. He's really interested in learning that. There is zero chance I will be able to teach him that. So now he practices with the cube and then he can practice, on his own cube. But now he's been able to solve it a few times and he's starting to solve it without help. And then it transforms into helping you, like showing you which moves, you made that you didn't need to make. So I don't know.
I love it. I withdraw
really
my derisive
fun.
laughter, but the idea of another thing being made smart is so funny to me. And I have this vision of like someone's Rubik's Cube, just you can't turn it anymore because you forgot to update the firmware.
Yeah.
And you have to pay a $20 license to turn your Rubik's Cube.
Jeff was very interested in, how it works, but it's definitely just displaying the same thing on the computer. It's got some kind of sensor to know which things are up and where all your color blocks are and then giving you the next step. But it is totally ridiculous, but it's so fun. And if you have been someone that could never solve a Rubik's Cube and wondered how it's done, which is me,
right.
It's been really fun to do and be like, oh, okay, it's actually not, it's memorizing a bunch of combinations.
Right. As someone who's never been able to solve a Rubik's Cube, if my kid got super into them, I would welcome this software into my life wholeheartedly. All right, great recommendation. Jamila, what about you?
So I'm not a potato chip person, but I am a cheese potato chip person. I'm a connoisseur of cheese potato chips, and I have found the best one yet. Ruffles queso. If you're buying it in the States, you're getting the U.S. version of their queso that they sell in Mexico, which does taste a little bit different. I've had it. They're both amazing. It's like it's like think of a queso dip, right? On a chip. It's kind of like if you like the cheddar and sour cream Ruffles classic cheese chip with a little kick to it, I think you'll enjoy it. I eat them a few times a week and I spend so much time thinking about them. It is embarrassing. They're so good.
The chip that lives in your brain rent-free.
It lives in my brain rent-free.
Great recommendation. I'm recommending a museum in Washington that I had never been to for some reason, though, even though I've lived here for basically half my life over the course of my 46 years. The museums in Washington are starting to reopen now, and that has been great. And so a couple of weeks ago, Alia planned out a trip for us to meet some friends at the National Museum of Women in the Arts, a museum I'd never even heard of before. It's not one of the Smithsonian's. I think that's why I had never heard of it before. It's a privately run museum, which means it does have an admission fee, a modest one, unlike all the Smithsonian's. But it is a charming, beautiful, small museum that is perfectly family sized. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes to walk through. So you're out of there before anyone has a chance to be sick of the experience. And it's a great mix of a extremely well curated collection of classic and contemporary art by women and a rotating set, as all museums have, a rotating set of shows, which when we were there were just extremely fascinating. There's a show by the textile artist Sonia Clark, who does a lot of work on race and visibility, particularly around Black hair, and has made a bunch of totally fascinating two-dimensional sculptures using Black plastic combs that she pops the teeth out of to create different wild patterns. all in all, it's like just a great sort of hidden gem museum right here in Washington, D.C. I'm sure for some people it's not hidden at all. They've known about it forever and they'll be like, Dan, you're a dick. For us, it was a hidden gem. We never knew it was here. And we really loved it. Great museum to take the family to for an afternoon. All right, that is it for our show. One last time, if you have a question for us, drop us an email, momanddad@slate.com. We want to hear from you. If we've answered your question and you got an update, send us an email, momanddad@slate.com. You can also post anything you want in the Slate Parenting Facebook group. We sometimes work our way through that and find questions there as well. And it's a great place where you can get lots of good advice, not only from us, but from your fellow listeners. Everyone's pretty nice. If they're not nice, we kick them out. Just search for Slate Parenting on Facebook.com. Mom and Dad Are Fighting is produced by Rosemary Belson, for Jamila Lemieux, and Elizabeth Newcamp. I'm Dan Kois. Thanks for listening. Hey, Mom and Dad Are Fighting listeners. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we are starting a wine club here at Slate. Stay tuned for a conversation between Slate Money host Felix Salmon and one of the talented winemakers we're partnering with. To hear Felix's other interviews and learn more about our premium selections, check out the Slate Wine Club wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the Slate Wine Club. I'm Felix Salmon, and you may know me as the host of Slate Money, your guide to the business and finance news of the week, but I am also, as many Slate Money listeners will remember, a bit of a wine lover, and I like to drink wine, I like to talk about wine, I like to think about wine, and really, underneath everything, I like the storytelling of wine. I really think that wine is about stories and memory and experiences and the idea of transporting yourself to a different place. These are the things at the heart of the Slate Wine Club. It's not about, tasting notes and tannins and malolactic fermentation and microoxygenation and that kind of thing. It's about place and people and stories and just getting to enjoy a variety of premium wines and learning about them from these expert winemakers, often who've been making wines not just themselves but in their families for hundreds of years. And these stories really help me enjoy wine, they'll help you enjoy wine. But before we talk to today's winemaker, you probably want to know why you should join the club and how to become a member of it. So as a Slate Wine Club member, you will get expertly curated selections of premium wines made by some of the world's best winemakers. Each shipment includes 3 bottles of unique high-quality wines delivered right to your door, and joining is easy. Just text SLATE to 87877-SLATE. That's SLATE to 878-777-5283. Once you receive your wines, you'll be able to sip each one while listening to an interview with the talented winemaker who crafted it, and that's exactly what we're doing today with Alex McGregor. Alex is the kind of guy that you call when you want to do something maybe a little bit new or not in vogue, like radical field blends. A field blend is basically where you just take all of the grapes in the field and put them all together, no matter what they are. And it can be spectacular because it's really close to nature. It's in many ways the purest expression of terroir. So John Fetzer hired Alex, gave him a proper budget, lots of independence, and gave him time to experiment. And 20 years later, here we are with Saracena, a benchmark in Mendocino, which is a very up-and-coming part of Northern California wine country. Alex McGregor, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me about Saracena. Where is it?
Saracena is in Hopland, California, which is in the heart of Mendocino County. We're about 25 miles from the coast as the crow flies.
Tell me about the climate. Is it lots of fog and winds and what's it called? Temperature gradients?
The climate is changing, unfortunately or fortunately, so our fog influence is diminishing every year, and we do get a high and low shift of up to 50 degrees a day. For example, we had 90 during the day last week and 40 nighttime temperatures, which is fairly unique.
Wow. What does that do to the vines?
There's a story that's definitely a story from California winemakers about warm days and cool evenings retaining natural acidity, and it has legitimacy in our county. We cool off quickly and to an extreme. And so with vineyards like the one I just described to you, Lolonos, which is the oldest Sauvignon Blanc in the country, dry farmed, head pruned, legitimately these cool temperatures help it retain its acidity almost to a fault, where the wines are verging on European with their acid levels, which is my preference.
Verging on the European, heaven forfend.
Heaven forbid.
And dry farmed means you don't irrigate it. You just leave these poor, struggling vines to fend for themselves.
Exactly. It's tough love. Another story that I think has legitimacy with older vine material like this vineyard in particular. They do struggle, but you end up with, needless to say, much, much lower yields than a modern commercial Sauvignon Blanc vineyard. And it's just like a tomato vine. The fewer tomatoes on it, the sweeter and tastier and juicier they are. And it's the same thing applies to grapevines.
Is that true for all of your wines or just your old vine Sauvignon Blanc?
No, we're currently replanting vineyards at the property. The vineyards changed ownership within the last 2 years.
When the owner changes, like how much of a difference does that make?
In this case, a massively positive one. He's passionate. He sees the potential in the property, sees the potential in Mendocino County, which is rustic, would be the sexy terminology for it. We're Napa Valley 25 years ago. We're still relatively rural, and we're not deluged with traffic, congestion, millions of people. You're not stepping back in time, but there's a more authentic experience. It's a county that's full of iconoclasts, i.e. cantankerous fourth-generation farmers that are fun to hang out with. And when I've taken people to some of the vineyards that we source fruit from that are not used to standing in, say, vines that are 75 years old, it's magical. And their eyes light up. And they all say the same thing. I would love to make wine out of a vineyard like this. And that's part of the appeal. We're lucky there's a surfeit of those vineyards in this county still.
I have a bottle here. It says Old Soul, vintage 2018. This is a field blend, right? You just pick all of the wine in a field and it's a bunch of different grapes?
Yes, by design and not by design. There's some field blend components in it. There are some single varietal vineyards in it. There's some Old Vine Zinfandel. There's Old Vine Petit Syrah. There's younger Malbec in it. There's some ancient vine Carignan, and that Carignan vineyard is a field blend of Carignan, Grenache. There's one grape variety that we are not sure what it is. A mix of whites interplanted amongst the reds, about 250 French Colombard vines. It's quite unique.
You mentioned something interesting there. There's old vines and then there's ancient vines. What's the difference between an old vine and an ancient vine?
Nothing, probably. Semantics, my language. I would say nothing at all.
I like ancient. Ancient is good. So how many fields does this wine come from in total?
Off the property here, there are 5 different blocks that it comes off of, and then a vineyard called Casa Verde, greenhouse, not too clever, but says what it is, an abandoned greenhouse. I'm going to say 10 to 12 different blocks.
Wow. And so that's where you come in, right? You're choosing the blocks, you're throwing them all together, you're picking which fields, which blends, and you're trying to create something magical at the end of it. Tell me, what's the vision for this?
Sophisticated peasant wine is the vision for it. I'd like it to be not incredibly polished and sophisticated at the same time, and also to evoke some of these old vines and to make you want to have a second glass or split a bottle at lunch with your best friend.
Okay, so I'm going to open this guy up. You have a cork. Do you have an opinion on closures?
I do. Cork is certainly the most sustainable. That's important. And it's traditional. I was a sommelier. I love popping corks. I love that sound.
That's a good sound.
Yep.
All right, let's see how sophisticatedly peasant this is.
I'm diving in over here as well.
You should. Now, okay, so this, to me, this absolutely smells of California. This is unmistakably Californian wine, and I haven't even tasted it yet.
Because it's warm?
It's warmth, and I poured it into the glass, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember sitting out on the porch in Napa like 15 years ago. You know how smell memory lasts much longer than like any other memory, and it just takes you straight back.
It does for me.
And I guess it's also the Zinfandel, which I honestly don't know if I ever drink Zinfandel from anywhere other than California. So what am I looking for in this wine once I start tasting it?
Sunshine.
California sun.
There you go. Black
Some
fruits.
tannins.
Some tannin. And so the tannin is intentional. As I said, sophisticated and peasant at the same time. I think tannin is important in wine. We're drifting away from tannin in red wine making generally, and I think it's a mistake. It's just because of the way this wine, for example, would work with the lunch that we're going to share.
What am I eating with this wine?
Something with mushrooms, something with probably animal protein, certainly not barbecue. That's thrown out too often. It could be, but I see roasts.
Maybe a beef Wellington.
A beef Wellington would be delicious with that wine. Yes, I love beef Wellington.
It's a lot of work, but if you get someone else to make it for you, it's awesome.
Agreed.
Just looking at the back of the bottle here, it says 14.7%. This is a pretty big one, alcohol-wise.
It's not silly ripe, but the core of it is Zinfandel, and that's Zinfandel in California. You can tame the beast to some extent, but picking Zinfandels to come in at mid-13s, you're not going to get that core iron, zinny fruit that you get when you're picking it more potential alcohols like 14.5, 14.6. So I make no apologies for it. Our Sauvignon Blanc is 13.1. Our Rosé is 12.5. So it's representative of the wine. I am intentionally trying to lower our alcohol content across the board with all of our wines, and have been doing so for the last 10 years. But the core of this wine with Zinfandel has got to be in that sort of sweet spot.
How do you do that? Because, I mean, ultimately it's those 90 degrees days, right? They just get that fruit really ripe and that sugar turns to alcohol.
A lot of the vineyards that I source from are not on wires or trellises. The canopy flops over, and so a lot of that fruit is protected. Most of the Zinfandel that we grow is head pruned, which means that the fruit never sees the sun. The sexy winemaking term is dappled light. That, and intentionally picking at perhaps slightly lower sugars, sourcing out raisins. So when we pick Zinfandel in particular, we run it over an antique sorting table, and I can pull a judicious amount of raisins off of clusters to keep the sugars moderate.
So the tannins, I guess, is the peasant bit?
Yeah, tannin, and there's also some pretty pronounced acidity in it. It's not a low acid red wine. You say Californian, but I think texturally you're drifting more into Italy.
Tell me about acidity in red wine. What does it do to the wine?
It pops more, and it causes the wine to linger more in your mouth, and it makes you want to go back and have a second sip, especially if you're having it with a meal.
You say that it's going out of favor. Why would people not want acidity in their wines?
Well, not just acidity, but tannin as well. There was a trend to make wines very rich and very ripe and very soft, and sometimes a little bit sweet. And there's a shift back towards acidity and tannin being okay in wine. A lot of that's happening in your neck of the woods in Brooklyn, New York City, thanks to a lot of great wine bars and sommeliers that are bringing back more traditional producers, lots of interesting wines from all over Italy, southern France, that aren't afraid to not be incredibly soft and rich and voluptuous, and are remarkable because of it.
So something a little bit rough, a little bit earthy, a little bit like get your feet dirty.
A little bit, yeah.
Let me ask you 3 questions. Number 1, is white Burgundy the greatest wine in the world, yes or no?
No.
It took a while to come up with that one.
I've had, like you have had, many, many, many great white Burgundies. And I worked with David Ramey for the first 8 years of the project here at Saracena. And he was sort of the progenitor of bringing white Burgundy technique to California with barrel fermented, unbelievably delicious Chardonnays. And I've tasted a lot of great white Burgundy with David and with some other associates and friends. So there have been some real epiphanies, but there are so many other regions that are on the same level, I would say. So it's hard to pick one region.
Are there any other regions on the same level that are in the New World?
Yeah, Mendocino County.
Mendocino County. There you go. Represent. Next question. Do you have a dog who helps make this wine?
A dog? I do not have a dog. We have alpacas.
You have alpacas?
Yes, and the male is called Music Man, and I've actually stuck a glass in front of his face to see what would happen, and it's been radio silent so far. A lot of snot, but not a whole lot of help.
I've never had a wine made with the help of an alpaca, so I'm not going to thank Music Man for this wine, because clearly he had absolutely nothing to do with it except for looking at it through like doleful eyes. And finally, which podcast should I be listening to when I drink this wine?
I'd say your own.
Wow.
Little self-reflection.
Yeah, and just going, oh my God, that was such a stupid thing to say.
Did I say that?
Are you one of those people who's okay listening to the sound of your own voice? It doesn't bother you?
I used to dislike it immensely, and I have gotten used to it.
I think this is it. This is my way of learning to come to terms with my own voice, is to drink Old Soul, Mendocino County, red wine blend from Saracena Vineyards while listening to my own podcast. And if I do that for long enough, I will start associating the sound of my own voice with like delicious, slightly rustic Italianate red wine from Mendocino County. And that will be a lovely connection right there.
It couldn't hurt.
So thank you again to Alex McGregor for joining us today and for telling us all about his 2018 Old Soul. If you're not a member of the Slate Wine Club already, joining is easy. Text SLATE to 777-5283 to set up your first shipment, and you'll be well on your way to enjoying premium wines, not to mention developing a better appreciation for the expert winemakers who fill our glasses.